All right, we are back for round two with Dan, John. We were having so much fun last time, but we had to cut things a little bit short just because, life happens and other errands and other important things happen. And so we're going to kick up where we left off. And just another brief reminder to those who have not already gotten it, my 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge, tons of fun. Features actually something that I can credit Dan John for teaching us all, which is the loaded carry
Oh,
and other very simple full body movements around the gait pattern that you can easily toss into your regular training. Just go to 9minutechallenger.com and it's yours for free. So there you have it. Dan, welcome back.
thank you. Yeah, this is great. I always enjoy talking to you. I'm always trying to figure out when we first met because I feel like I knew you a long time before I met you.
I think I can answer that question.
Oh, can you know?
Yes. It was the Orlando RKC, October
Oh, that
2010.
dumpster fire. Oh my God. As oh, folks, anybody who went to that one, God bless you. That was so we had to take a bus, right,
Oh, yes. Yeah,
to
yeah.
get on the facility and then walk for, I would say, a mile to get to where we did things. Oh, it was, and then I had to, that's, in fact, that's where the armor building complex comes from. That crappy workout. I was trying to do the graduation workout, and everything I tried to do, someone would say, "This is too much." Next person, "There's not enough. You need to do snatches in the grad workout." Why? And then no one let me work, and that's when I realized that that was the day I decided that I'm honestly uh, just if you listen to every voice in the wind, they can't always be Alex's. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah.
It's
And
very
that
true.
I wouldn't say I became a jerk about certain things after that, but there was a lot more no coming out of my mouth. And no offense, I'm not going to take advice from some people anymore. That's a lesson I learned.
Yeah.
That was insane. People got food poisoning from eating in that one Disney place.
I
So we
remember that.
lost about 20 people to really bad diarrhea, vomiting, food poisoning from one
Wow.
of the restaurants, one of the jungle restaurants or something. They all got sick. We had, oh God, that was a rough weekend. Yeah.
You know, you know what's funny is because it was my first ever experience and I was coming from way out of town and I had all this build up. I just thought that was the way everything was supposed to be. I was like, yeah, you take a bus and then you go to the hotel. And so it's funny because it's like for me it was like everything was this grand adventure, and the fact that it was in the wide world of sports
Yeah.
arena, I was like, this is incredible. It was
And you
like,
remember we'd get out of the session so late, and we were all staying in hotels, and the hotels were like, "Well, do you have reservations?" No. Well, we close in 9 minutes. Well, oh, it was just yeah. So, but it's good, and that is why if I ever do an event now, if I do a kettlebell certification, when I'm with the host, I'm always at going, is there food? Can people walk to food? How is there parking? Is there this?
yeah.
Is there that? I'm thinking about the customer experience. I mean, I'm certainly not I'm a coach, but after that, it's just like I didn't realize how important that was.
Oh yeah, big time.
Oh, and then people just trying to get by that one day after the food disaster. Oh, and people were just trying to drink water themselves back into health. Oh, poor people. I mean, just, this is before those, we didn't really have a lot of those mixable, those, there's like those little things you crack them open and they're like electrolyte
Yeah,
packets,
emergency.
emergencies and
Yeah.
RX and yeah, and Elements, another one. And so these guys are just drinking water, trying to get their stomachs to settle. And oh, it was rough.
I
Yeah.
do remember one guy in particular. I think it was maybe one of your assistants, got the guy with the glasses. I don't remember his name.
Mike
Yeah,
Brown.
Mike Brown, that's right. Because I remember thinking like, God, how awful. Like the dude comes all the way here to go through this. And I was also looking at it through like my eyes where this was like I'd spent 8 months preparing. I was just like so gung ho and excited. I was like, how would I feel if I were in his position? Like I get food poisoning and like I don't get to have that experience of like there's this crescendo at the end where you're like,
Yeah.
hey, you passed. Um, yeah, and I
Oh,
remember feeling so bad for the dude because he just had to sit on the sidelines and you
oh,
know,
just sit. I mean, there was one or two people who didn't even show up. And of course that happens, and I work with them. Oh no, that's great. Okay, I didn't realize that
yeah.
was that was one of the last great ones too, wasn't it?
I think it was. I mean, for me, it was the first one I had ever gone to. It was the first one I had any experience from because previously I had seen video footage because some people had taken like clips
Yeah.
from ones in Denmark and, throughout the like Minneapolis and stuff like that. And then, made mashups and stuff like this. And so it always seemed like this like grandiose event. So for me to be able to be under this, wild world of sports
Ah,
tent and, we had like 80 people there or something like
yeah.
that. It was
Massive.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, it was colossal. Yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, again, from my perspective, it was like I thought everything was supposed to be like that. I didn't, apart from the food poisoning, which is usually
Yeah. Kind of unexpected. Yeah.
yeah. But that is where I do remember that because you were very generous. I'd asked like, hey, I have some questions about easy strength because this was kind of like at the beginnings of the rumblings of,
Yeah.
hey, you can just do a couple of sets a day and see this incredible increase. And I think Easy Strength, the book, had not yet come out, if I recall correctly.
Probably not by then. No,
It
no.
was it was still the sort of a thing people were talking about on the forums, a lot of
Yeah.
questions about it.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember you sat with me at the hotel lobby, and we started to walk through like, here's what like a program would look like using these different movements and stuff like that. And oh, it was just great. I mean, it was. I think that was one of the other things that I really liked about the experience is that all the people that I had watched from afar, like you and Pavel and all the other masters who were there, it was like meeting them was actually like they say don't meet your heroes, but
Yeah.
I never understood it because that was like my first time I would say really meeting the people that I looked up to, and like they all knocked a home run out of the ballpark. It was just it was a great
That's great
experience.
to hear. I mean, that's just a great, and those are great memories. Yeah, it's all too bad. Yeah. Well, let's get on. Let's get
Yeah.
back to
You
where
know,
we were for our gentle listeners.
I one of the things that I've been ruminating on a lot this last week since our last chat was I really liked how we were talking about experience over research in terms
Hmm.
of doing what works. And of course, this doesn't mean there's no place for scientific research, but I go
Oh,
back to like what you talked about with the reasonableness workshop, where you were like, you know, 10% of your training should come from new scientific research. 80% should come from what we already know for a fact works. And then the last 10% you add from your own individual experience
yeah.
so that you can add to the ether that upon which people draw inspiration. And it's that 80% and the 10% of the previous experience and their own experience that people seem most willing to jettison in favor of the a recent study showed that according to the 5 people in this study who were geriatrics, you can do X, Y. And when did you start to notice that people stopped training according to what always worked and seemed to want to jump on cutting edge?
Well, I always make there's a couple lines in the sand. The first one will be 1975 with Arnold's the Education of a Bodybuilder coming out, and then the movie 2 years later, Pumping Iron, which I was at the premiere in San Francisco, and I met Arnold because
Wow.
I was the only person in the crowd who looked like they'd ever touched the weight. And he said to me, "Oh, do you like the movie?" I uh, I think what happened with that short amount of time, and of course at the same time the VHS is coming out. So you're going to get Jane Fonda and you're going to get Richard Simmons.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, there's two reasons the VHS took over and said Beta was a much superior product. And I don't even know if you even remember what a Beta is.
I know
Much,
the name Betamax. I know nothing about it.
okay. So, but it was interesting because VHS was sold, that's where Simmons and Fonda and porn used. And a friend of mine, he constantly says, if you want to find out what's going to happen in technology, watch what porn's doing. I'm like, okay. And he's a good friend of mine. I won't quote him because he's got he's a very influential person here locally. I don't want to throw him under the bus, but so remember, so we went from you would go to this facility, you would lift weights. If you didn't have a lot of time, you do alternate presses and you do some sit-ups and then you go home.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to everyone's searching for the burn. And you see the burn show up. 75 by the 80s. I mean, Jane Fonda is yelling, go for the burn in her videos almost countlessly. And you got Kathy Smith and all the rest of the Denise woman and all those others knocking out these videos. And the idea was, who can fry themselves the most. And, and I will say that, Richard Simmons, he was very good about the idea of staying within yourself. So that's the first one. So that would be, so what happens there is this. So we had the jogging craze. We'd had the tennis craze, the racquetball craze. These would all be pretty dead by these were dying ish by the time the mid 80s are around. Of course, the triathlon craze hit for like an hour and a half and then disappeared when people found out it was hard. But the next big one is about 1988, pardon me, 98, 99, 2000. That's when the internet shows up. And the people who originally run the internet, at least in the strength and conditioning world, they called themselves the HIT Jedis, high intensity training Jedis. And these are people who took the work of Ellington Darden, Arthur Jones. I have the magazines, at least some of them. People keep sending them to me, and I keep giving the other people, but like Hard Gainer was a magazine. There's the reason you're not improving is your DNA is terrible. Well, I mean, if you're going to blame DNA, you'll never be an athlete, an artist. You don't know what your DNA is until you 23. I mean, and there are people, I do know some people who are hard gainers, but so what happened is when the early internet came out, almost immediately in our field, there was this idea that if you did any more than one set of trap bar deadlifts, you were going to think your wheels would break off and you'd fall flat on your floor. So, okay, and are you okay with me going through all this?
Please, this is very fascinating because this is actually a lot of stuff I don't know, but I'm starting to see some patterns that I'm seeing repeating now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of course, yeah. So I was encouraged by a New York doctor, Tamir Katz, very nice man, to get a website because I had all this information that he said to me in a letter, we've got to counter these hit Jedis with real training. And so that's when I opened my first website, probably in 98, 99, whatever we called them back then. I don't even know. It wasn't a blog. It was a hosted home back then, man. It was
Yeah.
brutal back then. And then I started meeting people. I met the low carb people first. I liked the low carb. They called them at kids, at instead of Dr. Atkins, they call themselves at kids
I like
because they
that.
followed
I
him.
love a good play on words. That's a really good one.
Yeah, and so what was cool about them, and I met these women, and they used not squats. They used glute work, squats or deadlifts, and then overhead presses, and that became a foundational truth that I still base my training on.
Mhm.
Overhead presses and glute work are still, and I got this from Womenhood Weighed that to get in this one club, you had to lose 100 pounds on Atkins.
Wow.
And I got a ton of great weightlifting, not weightlifting for elite performance, but weightlifting for general humanity from them. And then all of a sudden in about 2002, 2003, I mean, the hit Jedis disappear, but what takes their place is instead of who can do the least amount of work, who can do the most amount of work.
Mhm.
I had never even heard of CrossFit until somebody sent me an email says that CrossFit is talking about you. And and Greg wrote, Dan John is the real deal. And then they had my site, blah, 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 whatever it was, hotspot dot slash fitness dot slash, slash this, slash, my website name was like 3 pages long, and that's when I met Greg and Lauren and the original one box of CrossFitters. This is probably 2003 or four. And of course, at the same time, there's this crazy little site online called Amoros. And Amoros is where Systema. I know it's up there. I have my Systema book is up there. This
Mhm.
is where we're going to meet Pavel. Pavel's on the MRS talking about someone asked him, how do you train for the discus? And he said, you should do pistols and one arm presses and single side deadlifts, which I thought, and I remember reading that thinking, I've never, that's really interesting. You know, it's because that they're talking about discus throwing, and the answer was like, wow, there's some crap I gotta learn here.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, John Duquesne is having that famous coffee with Pavel at the workshop that one of my friends, Ken, was at. That he paid $20 to listen to Pavel for like 8 hours or something like that. I can't remember. It was ridiculous. And that's when John and Pavel decided to start the kettlebell. And because of the kettlebell, then they had to teach it, the certs. And then so you've got CrossFit and you've got Dragon Door, that remember that I mean, when I first met the CrossFitters, they all had their head shaved. They had this little thing, or
Goatee.
that little goatee thing. They all wore tight black shirts. They all wore those climbing pants, and they all wore Converse black All Stars. And then later it was Vibrams, and then it was Z Health, and then it was, you know, collision pants, and it just and then everybody was doing the warrior diet. Everyone was doing the warrior, only one meal a day.
Yeah.
And then you'd be around them all day, and they would be doing, weird little wrist and eye exercises to keep themselves out of pain. And all they would eat at meals was protein. And then, and pretty soon you couldn't even go out with them because, they'd be in barefoot, in a snowstorm, eating raw meat. Okay, I'm exaggerating.
They were just annoying. That was the main reason you're like, I don't want to be seen with these people. They're
Come
acting.
on, yeah, I got a rep here.
Yeah.
So those you take those two periods, those two windows. Basically, if you don't mind, let's just do it. Get a little boring, but I would say that the windows are 75 to 85-ish. That would be
Mhm.
probably the height of the VHS era.
Yep.
And then everyone kind of goes, I'm hurt, I'm broken, I'm not ever gonna exercise again. And then the one set to failure shows up again. It had been around before, obviously. And that's the answer to all question. That's when you start seeing places like Curves opening up. You start seeing, a lot of those, a little bit more boutique gyms showing up at this time. And then when the internet hits with the CrossFit and the kettlebell wave, then it becomes who's the most intense.
Mhm.
Float in the background the whole time, of course, is elite sports performance. And there's this thing called bodybuilding. And of course, I've always felt that, bodybuilding, and I have great respect for bodybuilders, but the problem is, even when if I go to Reddit and talk and see the kettlebell area, they are bodybuilders who do the snatch test, because they will say, Dan, I read your program. Where are the chest exercises? Well, that's a bodybuilder answer. Um, I threw the discus extremely far. By the way, no offense, but in high school, I could bench more than probably any listener you have. Now, when I
Very
was
probable.
17, I was an elite bench presser. I threw the discus pretty far. When I stopped throwing the discus and just did snatches and clean and jerks, I threw it much, much farther. So I'm a big believer that the body's one piece. So the reason I'm saying all this is, in the back of most people's minds when they're listening today, when they hear fat loss, I say fat loss, you say burn, burn, fat loss, burn, fat loss. It comes on. When I say lifting, you say bodybuilding, lifting, bodybuilding,
Bodybuilding.
lift, bodybuilding. And so the issue, if you don't mind, if you follow my point, is this is 50 years ago. I mean, I'm a senior in high school when that book came out. That's, we still have, if I say I'm lifting weights, most people go, they give me a single bicep.
Yep.
If I say I'm going to lose weight, they say go for the burn. Even though, I mean, I have a weightlifting meet on Saturday, and nobody cares how I look if I put more weights over my head than my opponent. I have, you know, there are great diseases that, if you want to lose weight, there are some great diseases you can get that will make you lose weight far faster than these idiotic workouts that I preach. When I was in the Middle East, I picked up a liver parasite and lost 40 pounds in 2 weeks. I mean,
You should turn that into an ebook.
I don't know why I don't. I'd probably make one for once. So if you just kind of circle those two things, That is what's in the popular mind right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to make a prediction of what I think the next, because I think we're on track for another wave, just like what you described. This is my prediction. So you heard it here first, folks. If I'm wrong, okay, whatever, I'm wrong. I don't think I am. AI. That's going to be the next one. What does the AI say that I should do? Let me put this into like Chat GPT and have it spit out a program. One of the reasons that I mentioned this is that you touched on something just a moment ago that I think was very salient. A lot of times people mistake. Okay, people forget that you can choose the path, but you can't choose the destination. Or you can choose the destination, but you can't choose the path. Like if you say, I want to get to such and such place, it's like, well, there are just certain roads that you're going to have to take if that destination is really what you want to get to. But if you say, but the road there is not very scenic, there are not a lot of trees, it's kind of boring. Maybe I'll take this road instead. Well, you don't get to choose where you end up if that's the case. Like if you want to choose the road, you can do that. Or you can choose the destination, but you have to just take whatever paths are necessary in order to get to the destination. So I think one of the issues that people have is like how can I from how can I lose weight by lifting weights? Now that's actually a reasonable question to ask, but you also have to follow it up with, well, the thing that puts weight on you to begin with is what you put in you. So what are you going to do about your eating? And people want to try to outwork that. They want to try to overlook it. So they want to try to apply an answer to some of these problems, which may be a part of the solution, may not be anywhere close to the solution. And whatever it was people were looking for in the between 75 and 85, and then around the advent of the proliferation of the internet, I think we're going to see a lot of that with AI too, because I think people are going to be like, I want to get a custom made program and I want to see if I want AI to make it for me. So that way it'll spit something out based on my height and my weight. And it's like, it's still not going to get you what you think it's going to get you. It'll give you something, but not the thing that you need.
I need to write down like 18 points right now because you
Well,
just let me make two quick points and then
take
I'll
as
let
many
you.
as you'd like. Yeah.
In my book, I think it's in the Easy Strength Omni book. It's a classic Irish joke. And you walk up to somebody and you say, how do I get to Dublin? And the Irish person says to you, well, I wouldn't start from here. And it's if you go to Ireland, by the way, it is if you ever watch the show Quiet Man with John Wayne,
Oh,
the
sure. Yeah.
Ireland I go to, the Sligoes and the Galways, that is Mayo. That is still how people kind of talk. And
Sure.
you everything, they always answer every question, but there's always a little bit of, a little fun to it.
Of course.
So how do I become an Olympic champion? Well, I wouldn't start with your body. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be from,
Nebraska.
Bent Spine, Nebraska, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be, from someplace else. But the thing is, on my forum over at my site, Lisa Wise had a really good point. She's she's a very fine member, and she made a great point. Somebody had gone online, and people are doing this all the time. They send them to me. They send me these. They ask AI to get a program. I want Dan John, and they say a Dan John program for me. And Lisa makes a beautiful spot. She goes, well, the workout generator that's on my site is the algorithm is my brain. Brian mined the way I think. Can you go all the standards? But the first question we ask in the workout generator is, what equipment do you have? Because I can knock out programs for every single listener you have. But if it's, I'm down to 3 Olympic bars in my home gym. I know what you're thinking. What a crappy home gym it must be.
Yeah.
I only have 35 kettlebells.
Oh my gosh.
I have
How do
two
you manage?
I have 2 hip thrust machines. I have 2 dip pull-up stations. I really do have a good home gym. But if you give me a program that involves bench press, I don't have a bench in my home because it's the most dangerous thing you can do in a gym is bench press, and it's the only exercise I know that can kill. And it's not, so I ban benches in my home so I don't fall into the trap of doing it by myself. So you have a workout that says bench fly, bench press, incline bench press, decline bench press. Well, I can't do any of that.
Yeah.
That's my number one knock with AI. So question what equipment you have. And then the other thing is on you got to be able to instantly change exercise selection. And AI, as good as it is, isn't as good. We have this little thing that you just spin up and down, and it gives you probably for the equipment you have. I mean, it could be up to 40 X on when it comes to shoulder, overhead work. I mean, we could probably sit here and come up with 40 variations,
Easy.
you know, just and I mean, some of them like bottoms up press or waiters press, or I mean, you would start to get a little, we'd be a little bit into the weeds there on specificity, but
Sure.
still, they'd be different exercises.
Yeah.
All you've got is a 12 kilo bell, and I tell you to do half kneeling bottoms up presses, it's going to be a better load than if I have you doing two-handed. I don't know, two-handed. I don't know, whatever the hell
Whatever
that.
you would even call that. Yeah. Like
I
the
don't know what that is. The
yeah,
goblet press.
the
Yes.
goblet press. There we go.
Um, so I like your point on AI, and AI will be just as bad as go for the burn. It's all bodybuilding. It's one set to one hard set and go home, or it's you if you don't vomit, you didn't have a good workout. I
Yeah.
hope you see that. I hope you see that. Do you notice what you don't see? It's very much like the divisive nature you see in the United States right now. In fact, I heard this first about the Catholic Church a long time ago. This nun gave us a great keynote, and she said, the problem with the Catholic Church, and I'll say the problem in the United States right now, and problem in other places, is we're letting the 1% on this end and the 1% on that end dictate every decision, every discussion.
Absolutely.
And she said it's time for the radical middle, the 98% to take over, and it won't happen
Mm-hmm.
because the 98%, I'm just not that invested in anything that I'm not going to march around your house or, you know, you know, I'm going to try to kill your kids because you disagree with me.
Yeah.
The center second.
That's exactly right. They're the ones, this is true, as you're pointing out, for politics, for religion, exercise, it's really kind
Exercise.
of this tribalism that's
Yes.
driving it. It's this tribal mindset. And so often, you know, I, this, you definitely see this in exercise, is exactly what you're pointing out. So that's why you get average people who just want to get in shape, who are like, maybe I should do 100 box jumps in a single workout because that's on the WOD today. It's like, some people can do that and then wake up the next morning and not feel like, death warmed over. You're probably not that person because you would know, but at
Well,
least by now.
I'm not throwing CrossFit under the bus here, but in my personal life, the correlation I've seen between people starting CrossFit and divorce, I would say it is like people who eat a lot of fast food and obesity.
Wow.
It's a causation correlation. I don't know, but it's like one of those things you go like this. Okay, this is the 50th time I've heard this story.
Yeah. That's
And
fascinating.
yeah, and but is that a good way to go through life? Maureen, I think I mentioned last time at the senior center, she says the two secrets to longevity. And if you look down here, that's this little area here. That's probably yeah, that's probably 200, maybe $250 worth of books on longevity. And guess what? They all say the same thing. Let me have more. I'll quote Maureen first. You got to move and you got to be in community. That's the secret to longevity. Or you can buy all those books. And you know what they tell you? Exercise, movement, and community. Now it's true some of us have diseases, but in the big picture with enough, you know, people in the study, the more you move, the more communal, social you are, the better.
No question about it.
No
You
question
bring
about it.
up a very important point too with the community side of things and exercise. There's one other category I remember from the reasonableness workshop, which, by the way, this would be 10 years since that workshop. And I still think back to it all the time. I have notes that I took, like furious notes, like as fast as I could scribble them onto paper. This was before I think I had well, maybe not presence of mind, but before I thought, and before anybody thought I need to take this all down on a phone or I need to record it all and then just forget all about it. I took notes, I reviewed them.
Yeah.
There's a third category, at least in terms of if we look at the not even just longevity, but we look at the exercise side of the equations. Don't make me look stupid.
So that was with training women, specifically with
Yeah.
training women. Yeah. And it's the idea, and I picked this up early. And I actually, and it was my daughters who really brought this home for me. Just don't don't make me look stupid, you know. Uh, you know, my my group this morning was all females. I had all my female throwers train with me, oh, probably 4 days a week. It's and you know, I most of the listeners will look stupid if you train with my collegiate throwers. But my job is to not make you look stupid. So I would adjust and fix things to make you look so you could fit in and learn what we're doing and move along.
Yeah.
Folks, don't make me look stupid sounds so silly, but what most people want in life at some level is mastery. Um, and I always say in a lot of my books, and it's funny with my books, people push back my books. There's some
Never with
mean,
books of their own. It's always something on social media or a forum or whatever. It's yeah.
yeah. But one of the things I used to really emphasize with people is grace and mastery, and I still feel that. Um, when I realized that I was way too short to be an elite discus thrower, which is weird to say that because I'm usually the largest guy in every picture, right? You know, you know. I decided I would have the most beautiful technique, and it's interesting because there's a sportscaster here in town who I competed against his father, and one time I bumped into him and I said, "Hey, you're Blank's kid, huh?" And he just looked at me and goes, "You helped me in high school." And I go, "Oh yeah, yeah." It was just kind of a funny little weird moment that happens
Yeah.
when you're been in it as long as I have. And he goes, "Yeah, my dad said your technique was beautiful." And I thought, well, that's a victory because that's what I wanted. But the
Yeah.
fun thing is, if your technique's beautiful, the discus goes a long, long ways. If your technique is beautiful and you hang in there, the snatch test is easy. If your
100%.
technique is beautiful and you're not an idiot, you can go heavy on Turkish get-ups. By the way, you might have heard that second part and didn't hear it. If you're not an idiot, okay? All right, there you go.
Yeah, I find that tends to be very good advice for a lot of things, but doubly good if you are in a precarious position and there is a really heavy weight dangling above your head. Not being an idiot should certainly be some sort of a technique standard because it's a necessity.
We had the guy at the gym who kind of became famous for a couple hours. He came and visited us one time. He was doing a Turkish getup with the 40K, which I think is excessive, and he got his wrist wrong and it hit him on his rib cage. Now, today is the 5-year anniversary of my brother Phil's death, who had in a fundraiser, there was a bicycle crash and his rib got into his liver and that's what killed him.
My
Uh,
God.
and then a couple of weeks ago, my other brother Rich was helping his mother-in-law, who's 98, move and he slipped and Rich's rib went into his lungs. He's fine now. But my brother Phil was doing a fundraiser for the town of Paradise, California, which had burned to the ground. My brother Richard, who got hurt, was helping his mother-in-law. I can defend those two things.
Certainly.
I can't defend a Turkish getup on your iPhone,
Yeah.
to prove to the world that you're better than me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's a very good thing to point out because I've known people who have I there was one guy in particular that I know, very smart, quite strong, but he fortunately he only hurt his wrist only, but he's a chiropractor. So he had to take 6 weeks off of work because he couldn't adjust anybody while his wrist healed up. So and he was doing I think it was beast get ups and he was perfectly capable of doing it, but the problem was that I think he was at his mom's house and he didn't want to scuff her floor. So as he brought it down, like he brought it so that it was on his wrist so that, he didn't bring it on the normal way. He made one mild adjustment and it cost him, 6 weeks worth of income. So, yeah, the get up is one of those things that I really like. I think it's a great movement, but I also don't think it's anything close to the end all be all.
Yeah.
And I tell this to people, and they're like, "You hate the get up." I'm like, "No, I just contextualize it because I want you to understand that number one, you're probably going to get better at it by doing movements that are like, let's say, military press, row, some push ups. You know, like to say that it's a beginner exercise, it's like, okay, goblet squat is stand here, squat down, stand up. It's like really two movements. It's the standing position and the squatted position. And then you do as many reps as you want. Military press from the rack, overhead. It's two things.
I like this.
Turkish get
I
up.
like-
14 moves to do one rep on one side. It's like, that's not beginner material
And
at
my
all.
favorite, this is my favorite. This is how I test it. Half a glass of water on your fist, and if it spills, obviously your shoulder was not in the right. You know, and I got to tell you, I've seen people sweat harder with half a glass of water than they will with a bell, because
Easily.
wet is something there because it's instant feedback that you screwed up. So it certs. I have people do half the glass of waters, and it's amazing because the room becomes quieter and quieter, except for an occasional shit, hush, shit splash,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
but the intensity ramps up,
Big time.
and it's wonderful.
I
Again,
remember.
I'm not against the get up. I'm not against this. I'm not against that. I like what you said. Context.
Yes, 100%. And I think that, I remember when I was teaching at the Dragon Gym, Sam, he was preparing me to, Sam being the owner, he
Sure.
was like, okay, so here's what we do when we do onboarding for people for the kettlebell class. You're going to teach them the goblet squat, the swing, and the military press. And in my head, I thought, well, why not the get up? This was 2018, probably 27, late 2017, early 2018, and in my head, I was just like, but the get up is like what we do for beginners. It's like the swing, the get up, and the goblet squat. It's like, but I was like, he's the boss. He's done this a time or two. I'm just gonna listen and I'm gonna, try this out. Well, the whole point behind it is you wanted to get people be able to get the sensation of what it's like to participate in a class. So they would come like maybe 20 to 30 minutes early. I would run them through the basics to make sure that they could do them successfully and safely. And
Oh,
then they
cool.
would join a class. And then when I did that, I was like, now I get it. Because otherwise, I would have spent 20 minutes teaching them a portion of the get up on one side and they would be frustrated. And then they would see everybody else kicking butt in class and they wouldn't want to come back. And it was then that I realized too that they had more in common. For instance, putting the military press in there along with the get up and the swing is that you've got again movements that really have two steps. It's like flex, extend, okay, versus rotate and spin and dodge a bullet and all these other things.
Good.
Um,
Okay, yeah, that's impressive. I
yeah.
like that, Jim. Are they still in business out there?
Oh yeah, yeah. They're doing great. I
Dude,
mean, I last time I was out there, I went out there last year with Pat. Actually, we went there to do a
yeah.
workshop. And yeah, they're doing awesome. They've got classes, it seems like around the clock, they're
God,
doing
I've
great.
worked there twice, and I really and is it King of Prussia? Is that where it's in?
It's not far from that. It's about 20 minutes from that. It's in Exton. It's like
Yeah.
Exton
Oh,
is kind of like a small, I guess you call it a borough, like in between Westchester, Downingtown, you might remember because I think that was where, isn't that where
easy
they,
street.
yeah, I think it was, that's what I heard is that it was the
Yeah.
quote unquote Philadelphia was where it was, but it's really like 50 minutes outside of
Yeah.
Philadelphia. Yeah. And I think it was Downingtown.
Wow. Good memories. Well, let's continue with the
Yes.
question.
Yeah. So, bottom line, this is one of the things that I really like, and one of the things that again we touched on a lot in part one was this focus on experience and um, and I would say like not just individual experience, but group experience with what works over a long period of time, and trying to draw people into that direction and away from the shiny objects and all the other things that have a tendency to distract people from what they really need to be doing. And how does one even begin to do it? That's the real question. It's like at some point you've got to try to, they've got all this momentum trying to push them toward the light, meaning the shiny object, and you got to get them away from the light and to, reality.
Yeah. And that's why I write books. That's why people ask me to go to workshops. And sometimes I just don't have the answer. I've almost become, I think I mentioned this last time, I've almost become kind of negative, Alex, about this. I'm down to the point where only 1 in 20 Americans exercise, only 1 in 20 people floss, only 1 in 20 people get to retirement and don't need Social Security. Only 1 in 20 people actually read after high school. So I do all those. So where does that put me in the numbers? So I'm more and more sliding away from this. Sorry, and I'm sure my parents wouldn't like this because they like the kumbaya stuff. But 19 out of 20 people aren't going to listen to it. They'll want to listen to everything I say, but they won't pay. They won't invest in it. They won't invest with their time, talents, or treasures.
Mhm.
But they want all the advice at a party. You know, that, and even if, and you know, I do everything I can. I can do everything I can, but I can't do everything. I can't do it for them.
Yeah.
We have a little line on my gym wall that says, "What's better than nothing? Anything." And it's just hard. I don't know how to motivate the people who don't want to motivate. The other thing also too, and this is going to sound mean, and don't take it that wrong. This is just my experience. Maybe I'm only 1 in 8 billion people on the planet, so maybe it's only me. But when somebody asks me for advice at a party or at the Sky Club or the plane or whatever at my house, almost always two things happens. First, they already know what I'm going to tell them. And number two, they push back on everything I say.
Happens to me too.
When I say you need to eat vegetables at every meal, well, it's just, you don't know my schedule. Well, can't you chop vegetables on a Sunday and just leave them in a little Pyrex thing? So it's sitting right, just how, what do you, or the other classic one, what do you mean by a vegetable? I'm like, come on. You're clearly a 19 out of 20. You're never doing anything. But you're right, and that's the issue. And then let's also blame where it's due, the fitness industry, because the advice we have been giving for a long time is utter nonsense. I went to there's a bookstore in town, and they save things for me because I buy everything. But this is Bruce Randall. He came to my high school. When I was in high school, he came to my high school and he spoke. This book cost $2 when it came out in the 70s, and now they charge me $5 on it now. And I looking at his course for beginners. It's leg raises to warm up, curls, clean and press, bench, toe raises, rows, hack squats, which is interesting, deadlift, sit-ups, and then these weird little twists. This book from the 1970s and my Ted Williams book from 1965 and my Miles Callum book from 1962 are all better than 99% of the nonsense you can find right now. They're all better. And they all basically have the exact same workouts. They haven't changed.
Yeah.
And the equipment and my armor building formula book, I keep telling people, back in the day, the 110-pound barbell set, the 50-kilo barbell set, is probably all the bulk of our listeners today will ever need in their life. There's a site online, and I told Pat this morning because I thought it was funny. So this guy is he just goes into depth criticizing everybody's work. Now, he's never heard of me because I'm not in his reign, but I was reading over his attack on Greg O'Gallagher. Greg O'Gallagher's Kino Body,
Yeah.
Warrior Shredding. Now, I know a lot of people hate him, but I actually like his work a lot. And I can get why you would just look at his videos and go, "Oh my God, I want to strangle him." I get that. It's not my style, but I don't care about style. I look at substance.
Sure.
I'm honestly think I'm rare because I used to always get stuck in style. And I go to I'm some looking around and he's got a little standard. So I go in there, and on his front squat standard, it says on his site that many men can build up to an 80 to 120-pound front squat with training. And that's when I realized that I'm right. I mean, I'm 67 years old. I don't know of a time since I started lifting 65. I probably couldn't have front squatted 120 until I was probably 12 or maybe 13. But since 13, I don't, even with a hip replacement, I still know I could have front squatted, you know, 120 pounds.
Yeah.
And so really these old programs with the 110-pound set, and you do 2 sets of 5 or 2 sets of 10 and you do 8 exercises, they're so much better than all the fancy crap you see online nowadays. Okay.
Yeah.
But
And the
not sexy.
yeah, but one of the reasons that people like Bruce Randall, who, if I remember correctly, if this is the right guy, I mean, at one point he weighed like 400 pounds, and
420
yeah,
with a 24-inch neck.
gun turret for a neck. The guy was just colossal and crazy strong. There's a story about him. He was at a gym. He needed a bench. So he looked over and he saw a bench and he went over and picked it up and brought it over to where he was. And everyone was staring at him. He didn't realize what the deal was. And he came to realize that the bench was bolted into the floor and he just pulled it out of the floor and just didn't even, that's how strong this dude was.
And then he leaned down to Mr. Universe. Yeah,
Yeah,
right
it
on.
was like 107, 170, 180 pounds. And you
Exactly.
looked at the workload. We talked about this last time. It was like, we talked about, who was it? Frank Zane,
Insane.
the crazy workload that he did, but he looked like a living Adonis. Randall was no different. And it's incredible to be able to swing between those two extremes and do so. Again, this is pre anabolics everywhere. He just did it with sweat and hard work.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things I try to tell people is that, and I used to say your grandmother's wisdom. Now I have to say your great grandmother's. But my mom, her idea for recovery is sleep. And if you're thirsty, you drink water, and if you're hungry, you ate. You drank milk, you ate meat, you had a potato, you had some vegetables, and then had some bread with it. I mean, if I could just if I could do anything with a sweep of my hand, the first thing I'd do is get rid of ultra processed foods,
Yeah.
because that's the biggest factor that we're having in the United States and clearly in England also, is ultra processed foods. And on the other side is that when people do want to exercise, the concept. I was just reading Dr. Bob Arnott's. Oh, there's my Systema book right there. Dr. Bob Arnott's book, where in his first book, he kind of poo-poos walking. And I thought, I'm reading it again. Now, it's a 1995 book, so, but I'm reading that. I'm just thinking, man, walking, eating vegetables at every meal, walking, sleep, drinking water, they're all such low barriers to entry, and they're so good for most people. And yet, and I don't argue with people anymore. I've kind of gotten away from it. It doesn't help me. But just people say, well, how does walking help you lose fat? And it's just like, well, because most people don't eat when they walk. Because I'm reading some of these bodybuilder types. Greg O'Gallagher recommends 15,000 steps a day.
Wow.
When I get up to 15,000 steps a day, I'm at 6 and 7 miles. Well, that's that's a commitment. When I was with Tim Anderson in England, we were walking 18,000 miles a day because I was with Tim Anderson. And, if you're with Tim, you're going to walk.
Yeah.
But, we walked to Richmond and all around and, had a great day. And, weirdly, when I got home, I weighed less. What a miracle.
Who'd have thunk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. For most people, if you can walk away from the high processed foods, folks, I'm not a nut. I'm not crazy, but the research is clear about processed foods. They're terrible for you. I mean, they're
Yeah.
if you want to lean out, they're terrible for you. Walking is probably the best exercise most of our listeners can do. Sleeping is by far the best recovery tool. Um, eat vegetables at every meal, and when you do that, and broaden that and make that just part of your life, and then the next part of the pyramid is going to be, you know, maybe you should lift some weights, but find the safest exercises you can, do the least amount in the beginning that you can. Don't try to do Frank Zane's, Mr. America prep program. Do Bruce Randall's beginners program, do Miles Callum's beginners program, do Arnold's Big Six program, 6 exercises. Uh, I'm not I just think we just go so overboard.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I want to mention this because I think that there is at least a cause for a feeling of hope. Because I know you said you feel very negative, feel very cynical, and we talked about Earl Nightingale last time, and we
This
both
is
know
Earl Nightingale reminding you.
this is Earl Nightingale. I wish my voice were that deep. Like I feel
Oh,
like
I know.
if
I
it
know.
were, I just the respect you command immediately would be like,
Oh, just, I mean, he could read a grocery list. So you need lettuce, iceberg varietal, and then you need radishes. Yeah, yeah, it'd be great. Yeah.
get 2 sticks of butter while you're out. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Well, one of the things that he said, and I've listened, for instance, to The Strangest Secret like
Oh, yeah.
dozen and a half times, like in the past month, even. It's just like
Oh,
on a
by the
month.
way, folks, the secret is attitude. There you go.
Yes, there you go. But still listen to the recording. It's free. You can listen to it everywhere. But
Oh, yeah. And it was a great Everyone had it when I was growing up. Yeah.
yeah, he one of the things that he said. Now you said only 1 in 20 people exercise. Well, one of
Hmm.
the things he said was that 95% of people by the time they're 65 will be broke. He said one will be rich, four will be wealthy, and the rest will be broke. That's 1 in 20. So this, in my opinion, is just the human condition, and he was talking to those 5% who wanted to make
Oh,
something of
don't
themselves.
you don't you know everything I get that whole lead the field? So I didn't have to, haven't I told you about this?
No,
Oh, hell. Okay. You want to be one of the top five authors of all top 5% of authors of all time?
yeah,
Sell 10,000 books of one book.
oh, let's do it.
One book. If you sell 20, you're in the top 3% of authors of all time.
Wow.
Now, I've been blessed. So, but most people, most books sell about most books don't sell at all.
Yeah,
The rest of the books get up to, they're called vanity presses. I think the number is 432. Someone told me that. I don't know if it's true. Um, so I'm in the top 3% of authors of all time. One of my books, Never Let Go, and there's another one too now, Mass Made Simple, have sold 20,000 copies.
wow.
Well, I'm just saying, I am a top 3% author. Ladies and gentlemen, you can use me in the same breath as J.K. Rowling, Shakespeare, the Bible and all of its variations, probably the Quran and a few others. You're welcome. Hi, I'm Dan John. Uh, what does it take to get in the top 5% of discus throwers of all time? I would imagine, honestly, it wouldn't be very far at all. Certainly, if you threw over 50 meters, probably 45, you'd be there. What does it take to be in the top 5% of your class in a school? That might be tougher,
Yeah,
depending on the school, because we're all chasing the same goal. But to be the top five as an earner in your class is much easier to do.
yeah.
It's easy to get good grades. A school I used to teach bragged this week that 70% of their students are on the honor roll. And I just kind of leaned in and said,
What are the standards for this honor
"Mm,
roll?
the standards." Thank you so much, yeah, for getting that quickly. I'm sure when you add up all the Olympic lifters over the age of 65 in the state of Utah, I'm probably in the top 5%, right?
Very
Yeah,
probably, yeah.
if you find a small enough pond.
Yeah. Well, that's the key is that,
Yeah,
Dan Kennedy mentioned him last time too. He said people want to jump around in an ocean, but you can't make a splash like that. You need to find ponds,
yeah,
small groups of people who are uniquely suited to help, and you make a small enough pond where you can actually make a big enough splash. That's
yeah.
really the key. And it's very much true for right. Most people have tons of ideas for books and then they think they can't do it. I'm not an author. I'm not this. I'm not that. It's not about who you are, it's about what you do. So put the words on paper, make it at least halfway good, and you sell a couple of copies, you're light years ahead of the people who won't even write down the article, the topic of it.
I imagine of all the musicians, for example, I don't know, I'm just guessing. But if you've ever performed on a stage as a musician, you're probably a top 5%.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, because it's just there's so many people who play the guitar, but to stand up in front of you, whew, that's a different world. So I think so. I hope the listeners are paying attention. I mean, I certainly still buy Earl's products. In fact, I've got a number of his books. Who can forget? They're somewhere in there, probably in that area, near my uh, David's books. Um, but his Lead the Field is available now on YouTube, and it's all, I think there's 12. I had 12 cassettes. And it's interesting because one of the biggest decisions of my life, when I didn't know what to do, I was just picking up my daughters and I listened to the 12th one. Um, it's called The Man on the White Horse. And basically, I mean, do you want to be a follower your whole life? And I was getting very comfortable. And of course, he says a rut is a grave with the ends kicked out. And I was in a very comfortable rut. Oh, I love being comfortable. I do.
Yeah.
But comfort will never sell 20,000 books. And I made that decision in and it changed my whole life. And I went from being, there's a movie I like called An American President. And he gets into a little fight with his advisor and he goes, you could have stayed, basically he says, the guy says to the president, it's Martin Sheen. He says, you could have just remained the most popular history professor at the University of Wisconsin, or you could become president of the United States. I mean, it's a great little line. So, gentle listener, I really recommend Lead the Field because it'll clear up a lot of things Alex and I've been saying.
Yeah. And I would say if we were going to make a grand summary of this conversation and the last, look backward in order to leap forward because there's a lot of stuff out there that is good, but trying to separate the wheat from the chaff and, finding the diamond in the rough or the needle in the haystack, all that other stuff, a lot more difficult now when a lot more people's voices can be heard and a lot of people are just talking nonsense. You look back at what has stood the test of time, whether it is for self development, Earl Nightingale, Napoleon Hill, Maxwell Maltz. You look at exercise, you've got uh, Bruce Randall, you've got the early stuff that Arnold Schwarzenegger put out. Uh, if you can look at what they all agree on and you just do it, just do for like 30 days, just see what happens. Don't have any goal in mind. Your only goal is just 30 days. Do what you say you do, and your life will be forever changed.
I I agree 1,000,000,000%. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned hindsight because we have an intentional community that meets every Saturday on finances, and Mike Brown is one of the people.
Hmm.
Uh, and Mike said last week our theme, it would be 2 weeks ago now, but he said the science of hindsight, and he said, when it comes to something like if you want to get yourself in shape, well, what did you do in your own past? That's the science of hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
When I was comfortable financially, you know, X years ago, what was I doing that made me comfortable? The science of hindsight. And we're big believers at our gym of going of looking back and making sure we're not forgetting things. When I work with my discus throwers, I'm in contact with my discus throwers. I coached well all the way back to 80. I'm still in contact with one of my throwers at Utah State who was with me in the 80s. But I just talked the other day to Eric Subert, so that does take me back to this. It's to the 70s, which just makes me laugh. Paul Northway, in the 90s and all them. And sometimes we'll just talk, we'll just be riffing, and I'll say, well, I'm working with these throwers from this university. And they'll very often say, are you still doing this? And I'll be like, oh, hell, no, but Monday I will be.
Yeah.
Monday, because sometimes you forget those things. Um, I'm retyping up this thing. It's sadly it's in my other room, but I've been taking notes from books and stuff like that, and I call it my little red book. And in there, I have notes. I read a Sports Illustrated article in 1973, and I wrote notes on this lifter named Kolev. Arnold's book comes out. I put notes in there on things I liked, and I'm retyping it up for my site and then I'm going to comment on where this came from, why I loved it so much, and but the reason I always did that is even back in 73. So, I mean, I'm guessing you weren't alive yet. Am I right?
Good guess. Yeah.
And in 1973, I was setting myself up for 2024 with the science of hindsight. Um, I'll go through my journal sometimes take you on you want a field trip real quick?
Let's do it.
So this basket here has all my journals,
Oh, nice.
and you can see oh, and some strength equipment and a CO2 monitor. But you know, these are journals that take you back to high school, to the 90s.
Wow.
So I'll flip through these. Sometimes the pages flop out. This is from 2000 and what, 20? That's 20. Yeah. This is my journals from the 20s, pirate maps and stuff like that. But I'll go through those. And this is my office, the Utah State University.
I love it.
I have a very nice tic-tac-toe board. Oh, when I'm training young coaches, one of the things I'll do is I'll have them play tic-tac-toe, and then I'll have them come over and play Connect Four.
Amazing.
So the problem with tic-tac-toe, I used to use chess, but if they don't know how to play, there's too many rules,
Too cerebral, yeah.
Yeah, but with tic-tac-toe, once you figure the game out, you can't play it anymore.
Yeah.
With Connect Four, so there's a lesson there. If a sport's too simple, and that by the way, tic-tac-toe is a very nice way to teach like shot putting. Once you figure out what needs to be done, you fold your arms, and you as the athlete better do that. What about this, and this? Well, that's fine, but you're not strong enough to throw. And when it comes to Connect Four, is really good, like for American football, is every time you put a piece in, it radically changes the strategy and tactics of the game. So if my best football player, Alex, hurts his knee, that changes that whole plan we had coming in an instant. So, and then I think I showed you those before, right?
Yes.
Those are my high school football helmets, back in the day. Oh, and then that's my chess set. See that there? That's
Beautiful.
It's based on that the Viking chess set that they found in that bog in Scotland or whatever. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, when I saw the Roman helmets, there reminded. Did you see the last Indiana Jones movie?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You know what? A lot of people didn't like it. I loved it. I thought it was
Yeah.
it was not as good as the original three, but I was like,
Oh, yeah.
this
Third
was
one. Yeah.
nothing comes close to the Last Crusade.
Oh, that's the third one might be as good. I never, after that, it made my teaching so much. But go ahead. I'm sorry to
Yes.
interrupt.
Well, it just reminded me of the scene toward the end of Dial of Destiny, where there's all these, like, I mean, it wasn't Roman, they were like the Greek artifacts that were on his nightstand as he woke up. Yeah. So I thought, oh, that was kind of funny. Yeah, my theory about the Last Crusade, the reason why Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade worked so well, in my opinion, was that number one, there's this underlying subtext that culturally we understand with Judeo-Christian culture. And this is why I think Temple of Doom, the diehards really like it. I like it. But because it's about Hinduism, people don't get it as much. There's not like a deep-seated, like, aha, I get it.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Whereas the thing that Last Crusade added, because it was still Judeo-Christian background, but it added like a reconciliation with the Father element that people really, really connect with. And I think from there, it's hard to do something everybody has a background on, Judeo-Christian culture, plus something personal that many people are yearning for, plus a third element. So if they could have only made those three, I think it would have been like the perfect trilogy. I was entertained by Kingdom of this Crystal Skull, and I liked Dial of Destiny quite a bit, but I definitely don't think that they hit the same heights that every movie in the original trilogy did for a variety of reasons.
I'm gonna make your week. I want you to go to Barnes and Noble. It's a bookstore. You
I've
might
heard
have,
of it, I think, yeah.
and they have their own books that they publish. And one of them is the three Indiana Jones. It's in one book, all three Indiana Jones books. And when you read them, like that third movie, there's a whole subplot of birds, and the X is part of a series of numbers that shows up.
Yeah.
So being 10 is part of a whole series. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. There is so much more.
Really?
And it's fun. Yeah. And if you love the movie, because your brain will instantly go to the scene but then there's more. Yeah. So
Okay, I'm gonna get this. Barnes and Noble about the original Indiana Jones movies.
and there's the on the back, it's his hat and a whip. It's just really good.
Beautiful.
It,
I'm gonna
they're a little expensive, but they're good books. So I
yeah.
don't obviously I don't mind spending money on books, right? Yeah.
No, I think whatever I can invest in books, I always find it to be a very, very good investment for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the tip because I've been a lifelong Indiana Jones geek. I don't have it handy, but I do have my own Indiana Jones hat. So every Halloween, I need a costume. I always just go as Indiana Jones. So I get the hat. I get something that looks somewhat like a leather
You ever
jacket.
seen the pictures of Indiana Dan when I was
No,
in?
Indy Dana Jones.
Oh hell, I don't know how I'd put it up on here, but yeah, I have pictures of myself on the Nile, and I
Oh,
wasn't doing it. I just had this hat that I used to use for painting, but it was khaki, and it went like this. And so
beautiful.
when I'm in Israel, this guy this guy goes, "Hey, look, it's Indiana Dan," and that damn name stuck with me the whole time I was in Israel.
That's
Indiana.
amazing. Send me the picture because you know what? When I put together the thumbnail for the YouTube version of this, I've also got a picture of me as Indiana Jones. We'll put them both up there. So
All
even
right, hold on. You let's keep talking, and I'll do the
okay,
hard
okay.
because
So
I'm a
I will do my summary because I want to make sure that people walk away with some golden nuggets, the kind that they don't have to be a swashbuckling archaeologist to obtain. The first thing is one of the things that I really liked that Dan had mentioned was the walking, eating vegetables, and just getting some good sleep. These are not just low barriers to entry. These are the entry points. This is the thing that people need to understand is that, um, you are not going to find too many people who are doing those things well and are not seeing some level of improvement. You do get to a point where you get to a plateau, but the plateaus are what you should expect. If you're never reaching a plateau, it's probably because you've never really progressed to any point where now you're just on this straight line.
yeah. If you don't mind me, reference another book. There's a great book called Mastery, which by the way, I love. Just in case you're wondering,
Yeah,
one of the things he talks about in Mastery is to learn to fall in love with the plateau.
yeah,
And the longer you can stay on the plateau, the more likely you are to just, suddenly break through and have these experiences that nobody else who misses the plateau will possibly ever have. And
yeah,
I've been blessed in my life. I've had many, many plateaus, and I didn't think they were good at the time, to be honest with you. So I snatched 130 kilos 1979, and then I didn't break that PR until 1991 when I snatched 142.5.
wow,
That's I snatched 286, and then it took me well, how many years is that? 13, 12 years to get through that barrier again. That's a long time as an athlete to be sitting around hoping and praying and that you get better, That's a long time, my friend. So yeah. So the idea, yeah, we won't go into it. Let's stick with this. And sorry, my brain just will whirl. I'll get those pictures to you. I think I know
cool,
where they are.
excellent, excellent. Yeah, sometimes I mean I've got like archives of photos that I've got to periodically peruse because I have no idea where anything is.
And I
Um,
don't know why I don't put names on all of them like I used to. It used to be so much easier.
yeah. So at any rate, as we wrap this up with this great second conversation in our two-part series, I want to encourage all the listeners to get Dan's work if you have not already. He's got plenty of great free stuff, obviously, on his website, on YouTube. He's got a great podcast, but the Armor Building Formula, Easy Strength Omnibook, some of his more recent offerings, there's in the background right there, all nice and spiral bound. They are must reads. I I would say I couldn't put it down. I had the PDF version, so it was basic. I just couldn't stop scrolling. So for me, that's great because usually that's the bane of everybody's existence. They're just constantly scrolling. This book is an eminently scrollable book, and if you do print it out, you're going to find it to be very much a page turner. Easy Strength Omni book, Easy Strength for Fat Loss. A lot of really great work coming out in just the past couple of years with Dan. Uh, any final notes, final words, final pieces of encouragement for
Oh,
the folks?
yeah, one of the things I hope the listeners are coming away with is that I really think that you, gentle listener, and you, Alex, and you, Danny John, uh, you guys are the architect of your success. And I think we've gotten away from that. I think if you can make decisions like if you can do it, it might take a few weeks, but I'm gonna strive for sound sleep every night. I'm gonna eat vegetables every meal. I'm gonna increase my protein. I'm gonna drink water. I'm gonna go for more walks. I'm gonna try to learn these few exercises. Um, if you can do those three things and kind of get yourself into a mental framework of kind of the one I was taught my coach, Utah State, Ralph Mon, little and often over the long haul. Try to get 8 hours of sleep for 28 days. Try to drink, um, try to have, try to increase your, I mean, I know there's no science behind the 8 glasses of water, but still, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Try to get those, try to get 8 glasses of water for 28 days. Try to walk every day. And I don't want you walking 15,000 steps, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. And, but you're the architect. And if you can take care of little transitions in your nutrition, little transitions, little improvements in your fitness goal, your exercise, little improvements with your sleep and your relationships. What'll happen is it's this idea that's not, it's that weird concept called synergy. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 3. 1 + 1 = 5. Where when you combine these elements, they always end up bigger than you possibly think.
Absolutely. We talked, I think, last time about how one of the issues with the medical field is that everybody's so specialized that they almost don't talk with each other. But that's exactly how the synergy works, is that everything in your life is connected. And when a couple things start getting better, everything starts expanding in the right directions exactly as you want them to. That, I think, more than anything, is what's going to help people.
Absolutely. And you'll be getting a picture here in a few minutes from me
Excellent.
of a young, handsome Dan John. Do you want without a shirt too for the girls, for the
Let's
ladies?
do it. Absolutely. For the guys, you know what? They're going to need somebody to look up to because there's a lot of very skinny dudes out there who don't know what it looks like to get beefed up.
Well,
So,
this is post liver parasite, the one. But
oh,
I'll
oh,
I'll 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 put them together for you. Okay.
excellent. I can't wait. I will choose the finest photos for the thumbnail coming out
And
with
then just put
everybody.
them on your site. I mean, the only thing is you might have to start charging, and you might have to get a mature audience only rating. Okay, I'm just getting.
Exactly. I'm gonna have to have a pop up that says like, "I affirm that I am 18 years of age or older." Yes, or leave site.
And I can't look at it in the state of Utah. Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, yeah, exactly. Or at least, you can't look at it on Sundays before noon or something like that. Uh, I should get something like that for my site just as like a gag. People are like, what did I end up on? Well, now I have to click
Oh
in.
my God, a pop-up. I'm willing to make massive life changes and look better, feel better, move better. You have been warned, and it's illegal in the state of Utah and the state of Texas to continue on. That always gets people to punch the button.
Oh man, I think you just gave me a perpetual traffic secret. Patent pending, folks. Don't even think about stealing this one.
That's
All
right.
right.
Hey, thank you. Thanks again. And if you want to talk again soon, I always love talking with you, man.
The pleasure's always mine. Thank you very much for being on. Listeners, I hope you have enjoyed. And as always, have fun and happy training.